of revenge porn. It's one of the more horrific ideas that the internet has facilitated. The reason for the name is that traditionally it was jilted exes in possession of naked photos of people they'd previously dated who uploaded pictures to public websites specifically set up for the purpose, which is bad enough. The people, usually women that the photos were of, had no say in the posting of them and usually couldn't get them taken down. Even worse, their real names and sometimes details of where they lived and worked were posted along with the photos. But as the revenge porn industry has grown to numerous websites containing thousands of images, it's become even more insidious. In recent years, hundreds of women who have taken photos of themselves that they never sent to anyone and never intended for anyone to see have had their accounts hacked and those pictures posted on revenge porn sites. Basically, if you have a photo of yourself topless or in your underwear saved anywhere at all, there's a chance that it could wind up on such a site along with your full name and where you work. Men like self-professed revenge porn mogul Hunter Moore are responsible. So when California woman Charlotte Law's 24-year-old daughter was targeted by Hunter Moore's website, she refused to take it lying down. In fact, she was instrumental in his site being shut down and the FBI investigating him. But it wasn't easy. I spoke to Charlotte Laws recently and I asked her to tell me how her story and that of her daughter Kayla started.
Well, yeah, she actually had taken about 100 pictures with her cell phone in the mirror, and she, one of them was topless, and she didn't intend to show them to anyone, but she sent them through her cell phone, to her email, and then to her computer. And 3 months later, she was hacked. And 9 days after that, the topless photo ended up on the most notorious revenge porn website, isanyoneup.com. And she got a call from one of her friends at work telling her about the photo, and she was absolutely distraught. And she phoned me and told me, and that's the first time I ever heard of revenge porn.
What did you think was the situation initially? What did you think revenge porn was all about? Because the scope of it sort of became clear to you as you progressed through this story, didn't it?
It did. I mean, I immediately went on the website and verified that the photo was there and started doing research on that website. I also subsequently found out that my daughter's friend had also been hacked and that she had a topless picture on the website and she had never sent it to anyone except her husband. So I had this clue initially that, wait a minute, there's hacking going on in relation to this website, yet the media was saying that it was only disgruntled exes who were submitting these photos. So I undertook this huge mission to get the pictures down, to get the picture of my daughter down, as well as to reach out to other victims around the country to find out how much hacking was going on with respect to the website. And I found out through my research that about 40% of the photos had been hacked, 12% of them had been photoshopped. So in other words, the victim had never even taken a nude picture of herself, but her headshot had been put together with a nude body, and it had been loaded onto the site, and it was her reputation that was being damaged. So that was over half the photos in my research study were either hacked or photoshopped. And then about 36% of them were what I call traditional revenge porn, and then another 12% were self-submits who were not victims at all, but people who actually sent their nude picture to Hunter Moore. So it was a huge process of trying to get this photo down. The website operator refused to do it. Hunter Moore refused to take it down, even though my daughter owned the copyright, and he was supposed to do it in accordance with the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. But he almost never took photos down. That was his practice. So I also went to law enforcement. I got the FBI interested in an investigation and handed over my file, which by the time they came to my house, it was about 10 inches thick. And I had phone numbers for victims all over the country. And so I think it was difficult for them to say no to it at that point because it wasn't just one victim anymore. There were multiple victims. It was something very huge that was going on, and so they did get involved.
When you refer to Hunter Moore, you're talking about the man who I think lives in San Francisco, who had created this website, isanyoneup.com, which contained these hundreds, perhaps thousands, of nude or topless photographs of women and their personal identifying details. He was very upfront about the fact that this was his real name and the fact that he was out to ruin women's lives. He said so in the media under his real name. The brazen nature of that seems quite shocking. Was it shocking for you when you discovered that this whole thing was the brainchild of one man who had set out very openly to do exactly what he was doing?
Yeah, I mean, if you ever had gone on the site, it was really amazing. You can't really even comprehend what it was like until you go on there. I mean, they were talking about raping women, killing women. I mean, the exact pictures of the women they were talking about. They would pick apart women's bodies. They would tell people to kill themselves. It wasn't just Hunter Moore. It was his followers also who completely participated in this pure evil, as Hunter Moore called it. That's what he called his website. He called himself a professional life ruiner, and his website, Pure Evil. He uses Charles Manson type of language, talking about his family, my children. They all call him father. And it's really just hatred of women. That's really what it is. It's just plain old misogynism and sexism and just pure hatred. It's very, very hard to comprehend. And by the way, he doesn't live in San Francisco. That's what he tells the media. He actually lives in Sacramento at his parents' house, just outside Sacramento.
Right. And he sounds like a very particular kind of character, but he wasn't one isolated case, is he? The internet is full of sites that are very similar to this one, use that same basic principle.
Yes, I believe there are about 870 revenge porn sites currently, which is a huge number. And it's really gotten out of control in the last couple of years. So that's why I feel that legislation is really the best way to try to curb this trend.
And you did actually have some success in that field, which we'll get to a little bit later. Was there ever any indication about why or how your daughter had been targeted through this hacking to harvest photos from her email account? Because it was a matter of her emails being hacked, correct, by someone who didn't actually know her, not that she had ever distributed these photos of herself to anybody.
Right. Well, the hacker was actually randomly hacking into people, so there wasn't any specific target of my daughter. What he would do is he did the hacking through Facebook, and it's kind of complicated, so I usually don't go into the details, but he would basically take over one person's Facebook account, and then he would start trying to take over other people's accounts and get into their emails. And the emails that he got into were all internet-based emails, such as Gmail or Yahoo, that kind of thing. And he would change the password, he would take over the account, he would take over the Facebook account, and then he would have access to whatever was in that email. And he would be able to even post the nude pictures on their Facebook page and had all of their information because he had the email account and he had the Facebook or the Twitter account information. And so he could put the nude photos, but also put the woman's name and the city and oftentimes her workplace, maybe even her boss's phone number so that the followers of the site could tell the boss that she's a slut and send the pictures and try to get her fired, or maybe information about her parents or disseminated to her friends or business contacts. So the goal was always to ruin the person's life. That was the goal. It was not about pornography. It was about humiliation and shame and hatred, primarily of females.
And the reason that your story has become, I think, so widely shared and applauded by people is that you obviously at some point realized that this wasn't just about your daughter, that it was also about Hunter Moore's site and others violating the privacy of hundreds, even thousands of other women, and you actually started to contact some of them, didn't you?
I did. It was heart-wrenching when you talk to these people on the phone, and I would say 50% of the time I was the first person to tell them that they were on the site. So they were hysterical, they were in tears. I mean, it was horrible, but on the other hand, I felt like I was helping people. I felt like I almost had a duty to do this because I had a lot of information by that point. I knew a lot about what someone could do to hopefully better their situation and hopefully get their photos removed. And so I did continue to call people all over the country, mostly females, although I did have some males who desperately wanted their photos down, and contact them and help them and try to get their pictures down. It was kind of like obsessed. I was obsessive about it. It was a mission at some point to really try to get these photos down and get the website terminated for good.
These women you speak in the article you wrote about contacting a kindergarten teacher who'd been fired because of Hunter Moore's site posting her picture online, a woman who had a medical image posted following breast surgery, a woman who hadn't even taken any nude photos but, as you mentioned, had her head photoshopped onto other people's naked photos as though she had posed for them. The scale of that is just phenomenal disruption and destruction of people's lives, really, isn't it? This must have been what these women were telling you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it was, as I said, it was just so hard even talking to them. I felt like a suicide hotline. They were like rape victims. That's why I call this cyber rape, because that's how they react. They just want to close down their whole life. They want to crawl into a fetal position. They are withdrawn. It's very hard for them to fight for themselves. They really have to have somebody in their life who's willing to go out there and fight for them, because they just can't deal with it. They feel so victimized that they feel they can't even move forward and do anything to try to better the situation.
You mentioned that the FBI ended up being pretty helpful, I understand, and in fact ended up raiding Hunter Moore's home. Did it take you a while to get law enforcement to understand the nature of this problem and the fact that they really needed to take some action about it because so many people were being targeted?
Absolutely. When I first went to Los Angeles Police Department first, and it was a female cyber crimes detective, and she was really quite condescending. She basically blamed my daughter for the photo. She said, "Why would you take a photo like this?" I mean, it was really upsetting, and my daughter just wanted to run. I mean, she didn't even want to be there. And so it was after that, then that same day later, I called the FBI, and the FBI didn't initially want to take the case. They told me to file a report online, which in my view meant they just had too many other cases and they just didn't have time to do it, and they were probably not going to do anything. And so I sarcastically said on the phone, "Oh, I see, you help Scarlett Johansson when she gets hacked, but you don't help the average person." And the man on the other end kind of sighed and said, "Just a minute, I'll put you in touch with a detective." And he transferred me to a detective who took the information and told me there would be 3 agents coming to my house later in the month. And my husband didn't really believe they were going to take the case, but as I said, because I initiated my own investigation, I was a private investigator in the 1980s. So when I started compiling all this information and it got thicker and thicker and thicker, my file did, then my husband believed, well, maybe they are going to take the case because now you found so many other victims and it's a huge thing now. It's not just one person. And so when I was able to hand that over to the FBI when they walked in the door, they were really shocked that I had compiled so much information. And I think that might have helped them to want to take the case because they only have limited resources. They can only do what they can do, and it's difficult. The internet is this unknown territory that's kind of out of control in a lot of ways, and people can go on there as unknown entities, as anonymous people, and they can do all sorts of horrible things to other people. It's kind of like the Wild Wild West, and the bad guys can go on there and shoot people up, and it's very hard for law enforcement to police that.
They did end up raiding his home, or his parents' home, I guess, eventually. Were they able to charge Hunter Moore with anything?
They haven't done anything yet. The case is still open, and there is, at the U.S. Attorney's Office, there is a case, U.S. versus Hunter Moore et al., and it's sitting there, and when I phoned the lead attorney, he won't tell me anything. So I have no idea what's going on with it. I don't know the identity of the hacker. I only know he went by the fake name Gary Jones, and that's all I know. So I know they put a lot of time and effort into this case and a lot of resources into it, and I was in contact with the lead FBI agent on a regular basis. So I was, even though he wasn't really allowed to officially give me any information, I had a sense, just kind of reading between the lines as far as what was kind of going on. But I haven't known for quite a while now what they're doing, if anything. I really hope that they are going to bring justice to this situation, because there are a lot of victims, Hunter Moore's victims, who were really waiting for a result to this. And they phone me and they say, what's happening? And are there going to be arrests? And I don't have an answer for these victims.
He shut the site down himself, didn't he, in the end?
He did shut it down right before the FBI raided his house. He did know, I'm pretty sure he knew about the FBI investigation, because when we had talked to his attorney and to the president of his internet security company, we disclosed the fact that there was an FBI investigation. And we also knew that Hunter Moore was very afraid of law enforcement and the FBI. So my feeling is that he shut it down because he knew what was coming, and he was worried about that, and he took an opportunity to sell the site for not very much money, according to the buyer of the site. And I think that he took that opportunity to get out of it rather than risk a greater opportunity of going to jail. He may still go to jail, I don't know, but I think his chances would have been greater if he hadn't shut down the site.
And as a result of that FBI investigation, which your work had really precipitated, you were targeted big time. You got death threats, threats of your life being ruined, threats of sexual violence. People rang your home anonymously and sat in their car outside your house.
That's what I had to assume, because, for example, when I first came out against him and he all of a sudden knew who his opponent was, I turned on my computer and all of a sudden there are 20 viruses on my computer. I didn't click on anything, I didn't do anything, bam, right after he learned my name, all of a sudden there are these viruses on my computer. So I knew it's his followers. I don't know if it's him or his followers, but I know that it's people who support his position, and it's very scary. You don't know who these people are, you don't know what they're capable of. I had read many comments on his site from his followers saying, I will kill for you, Hunter, I love you. I mean, people would post things like that, so you just don't really know who these people are, what their mental state is. And I got locks for my gates at my house, and as you said, there was a stalker sitting on my street for 2 separate evenings. And so it was a very scary time, and there are many times where, I kept thinking, should I actually come out and say who I am and go against Hunter Moore, or should I not? I mean, I went back and forth many, many times about it because I was really quite scared.
The group Anonymous actually came to your assistance at some point, didn't they? And you hadn't asked them to. They just kind of rallied on your behalf. What did they do?
Well, I was contacted. They knew what was happening through Twitter, because I was also being attacked by Hunter and his followers on my Twitter feed. And so I was contacted through Twitter, through direct message, by this guy who claimed to be with Anonymous, and he said that he wanted to have a phone conversation, and I said, okay. And he phoned me, and he said, don't worry, we're going to protect you. We're going after him, and this is what we're going to do, and this is what you need to do to protect your computer and this and that, your computer network. And I had a conversation with this man, and lo and behold, the next day they did go after Hunter Moore, and they crashed his servers, and they put a lot of his personal information online, including a social security number. And I think it really scared Hunter. He became very quiet. He stopped really talking to anybody. And because of the FBI investigation as well, he really isn't even talking to the media anymore. I'm assuming on orders of his attorney, because the investigation is still pending. So he's become very quiet, and all he does really is his Twitter feed, and he does some DJing in clubs, and that's really it. So as far as I can tell, he's not out victimizing women anymore, and that is a success right there.
Absolutely. Although I was going to ask you about that, because it does astound me that, bizarrely enough, these days, he is still an internet presence on Twitter, still under his real name, with 470,000 Twitter followers, and marketing himself as a DJ. 470,000 Twitter followers, that's kind of Hollywood actor type scale. Who are these people who support this guy? Did you ever really get a sense for that? I guess it's a hard question to answer.
Well, it's a subculture, and it's hard for me to know who actually all those followers are. I can't say about that. I did go undercover to one of his gigs when he was DJing in Long Beach. And so I did get a sense of the people as far as kind of what they were like, and they were drinking a lot, and they seemed to be very into sex, but nobody was doing drugs that I saw. Nobody was having sex that I saw, but they might have in some of the hotel rooms. I have no idea. But it was just this loud music, drinking, kind of very immature behavior, 20-year-olds mostly, and but he didn't have a huge crowd when I went there. It was a lot of different bands at this particular hotel, and they had kind of taken over the hotel, this event had, and Hunter Moore had one room, and I don't think there were more than 30 or 40 people in that room. So it's not like he had thousands of people cheering him on. That just simply wasn't the case.
Looking at what you've learned or managed to publicise through this, one thing you learned, and one thing looking at the responses to your piece, was something that shocked people, was that people had really misunderstood what revenge porn was, and you've touched on this. They thought it was angry exes uploading photos online that had originally been consensually handed over, which still isn't acceptable, obviously. But what you learned was the scale of the email hacking, the photoshopping, and the message that if you, man or woman, have ever taken a photo ever that is saved to any device you own or any cloud storage space or any email account, whether or not any person knows that the photo exists, that photo is not guaranteed safe, basically.
Well, really, any photo in the world isn't guaranteed safe, because you take a headshot of yourself, you could still end up with a nude picture on the internet, or what looks like a nude picture. So the truth is, nothing is safe, and that's why laws are so important, because that's the only way you can really protect people. You can't tell people, don't ever take a picture of yourself and put it on your computer, even a closed picture, because you still could be vulnerable to being photoshopped.
And it's something that really speaks to those who would blame the victim, right? In that people cannot be blamed. I mean, people shouldn't be blamed anyway for pictures, or, I mean, even if they've made a sex tape, that being distributed without their consent, or to people they didn't consent it being distributed to. But you absolutely cannot blame someone for the kinds of things that have happened to your daughter and to thousands of others.
Right. I mean, I don't think you can blame any of the victims, even someone who gives a photo to a boyfriend. I mean, the analogy I use is you're in a restaurant and you have a credit card and you give it to the waiter to charge your meal. If he goes off and starts charging everybody else's meals, you shouldn't be blamed for that. If you have a nude picture on the internet, or say in your email account or whatever, and somehow that's stolen from you or hacked, it's the same as having a bank account. You don't blame the person, your money got stolen out of your online bank account, it's your own fault. Nobody does that. They say, no, the person who stole the money is to blame. But because we have this society that still really looks at women in this negative way, I mean, there's still so much sexism out there, and the whole idea of, well, if you have a topless or a naked image and you're a female, then you must be a slut and there's something wrong with you. I mean, that's still out there very, very strongly, and this subculture really brings that to the fore. And so we need to change those attitudes in addition to putting laws in place to protect the victims.
Just finally, before I let you go, it's impossible, I guess, to enumerate or to gauge the full effects of having something like this happen to you, as one of the victims of these sites have had. How is your daughter doing now?
Well, she's doing okay now that the photo is down. I mean, the time that she was really upset and that she locked herself in her room and that she was completely freaked out was while the photo was online. And she actually lost an acting gig because of it. She almost lost a waitressing job. And she didn't want her boyfriend at the time to find out, because he was extremely conservative and she thought he would terminate the relationship. So she had a lot of worries going on and a lot of bad things happening. And the only thing she's worried about is the fact that some people may have saved the photo. And some of her male friends have even come up to her and said, oh, I have your photo, I saved it, Kayla, which truly distresses her to think that it's still out there and that people may have saved it. And if friends of hers saved it, surely strangers did as well. So she has a Google alert in her name. She realizes she's going to probably have to monitor the internet for that picture for the rest of her life. Really, really a huge and horrible task, but that's probably what she's going to have to do.
That was Dr. Charlotte Laws. Now, lawmakers across the United States are struggling to figure out how to legislate against this issue, but preliminary preliminary laws that Charlotte campaigned for in California, which do protect some victims, have been followed by a few other states. But Charlotte law says a federal law put in place right across the US is the only real way to effectively